They did not inquire. They hath but made their decision. And as is oft the case, I found myself obliged to acquiesce, to wear a smile, and to weave together the threads of circumstance into a tapestry of harmony. Mine appellation is Rachel Connors. In the bloom of my 28th year, I find myself a senior accountant within a reputable establishment. None beyond the realm of coin and trade are acquainted with my name, for I dwell in serene solitude within a humble abode, free from tumult and harm. From the very foundations of my existence, I have toiled and labored to construct all that I possess: my education, my vocation, my standing in the realm of finance, and even the humble table upon which I gather. No gifts, no easy paths. Yet, should you inquire of my kin, they might declare me to be the frigid soul among us. Not forsooth due to any outburst or departure, nor any act of malice, but rather for the simple reason that I ceased to tidy their disarray. Lo, I possess an elder sister, Erin, 2 years my senior, yet in a curious twist of fate, she oft finds herself 5 paces behind. Erin doth possess a peculiar talent for transforming misfortune into a grand lament, casting the blame upon all others in her wake. Another position hath slipped through mine fingers. The master of the realm was most foul in spirit, cast aside from yet another dwelling. Fellow dwellers in the abode did harbor envy. Yet another bill hath slipped through mine fingers. She doth strive with all her might. Verily, my progenitors, Carol and Frank, dost not question it at all. They dost merely pivot and rearrange, and if they find themselves unable to mend it directly, they dost turn to me. Thou art steadfast, Rachel. Thou art fortunate to possess the ability to assist. That was the utterance that did haunt me for many a year. Pray, lend thine aid with the payment for yon carriage. Assistance with the payment of rent, I beseech thee. Assistance sought for release from confinement. Ever be of assistance. And when I did declare my dissent, in those scarce moments I dared to resist, they would feign that I was the one setting ablaze the paths behind me. In my youth, I discerned that my worth lay not in the affections of others. To find purpose lies in the act of serving others. Yet, the bounds of utility are finite, and they were on the verge of discovering my threshold. In our abode, the Sunday repast did possess a certain cadence. Identical dish prepared anew. Identical table. Identical currents of strain, veiled beneath a facade of civility. That eve, a certain air of premeditation lingered in the atmosphere. Mother did welcome me at the threshold with a grin that stretched beyond the bounds of authenticity. Thou art looking most slender, my dear. Art thou consuming sufficient sustenance? Father uttered naught but a mere nod and a distracted, "Hark, young one!" Erin sat at the table, her gaze fixed upon her device, evading my glance as though she were a youth summoned before the stern headmaster. I discerned the omens. When my mother donned a guise of sweetness and my father fell into a brooding silence, it signified that they were poised to impart tidings I was certain to find unpleasing. We have traversed the verdant realm of greens. Mother did extol the fair weather as though it were a grand triumph. Father did persist in replenishing his chalice, whilst Erin, with a wary disposition, nibbled at her repast as though it bore the threat of retaliation. Then mother didst lay aside her fork, clasped her hands upon the table, and bestowed upon me that rehearsed smile she reserved for entreaties shrouded in remorse. "Rachel," she commenced with a whisper too gentle, "we have engaged in discourse. Erin hath faced many trials of late, and thus she shall take up residence with thee for a spell, in a manner most swift and unadorned. Neither query nor discourse shall arise." Her words fell from her lips as though she were presenting a tray of sweet confections. Verily, I wouldst assuredly respond in the affirmative. The air grew still, as if the very walls held their breath, anticipating my defiance, yearning for the rebuttal they might deem self-serving. I cast mine eyes upon Erin. She cast a fleeting gaze upward, then averted her eyes with haste. Mine father didst clear his throat, preparing himself for the impending dispute. In place of a frown, I didst offer a smile. Verily, I did respond with a jesting air. If it doth aid Erin in regaining her footing, I perceive no reason to withhold my consent. The hush that ensued was keen and piercing. Mine own mother didst blink, taken unawares. My father breathed out as though he had narrowly escaped a dire fate. Erin reclined in her chair, a self-satisfied grin spreading across her visage like creeping ivy upon ancient stone. None among them perceived the silence that enveloped me henceforth. How serene they believed I had succumbed! Yet, what they were oblivious to, what none had the wit to inquire, was that I had not dwelt in that abode for many a fortnight, and I harbored no desire to permit Erin or any of their kind to take residence in a realm that had ceased to be. Upon no sudden dawn did I resolve to weave falsehoods before my kin. Years did pass in their slow march. In the passage of time, I have borne the weight of silent disillusionments, of favors ensnared in guilt and sacrifices tethered to recollections, awakening to the truth that within my kin, endurance was laced with conditions, and to be the resilient one merely signified being the most readily exploited. In the tender age of 21, the chariot of Erin was seized from her grasp. She did call, her voice trembling with sorrow. She did declare that she could not reach her new place of employment. Proclaimed that this one bore a distinction unlike the rest. She merely required a touch of assistance to embark upon her journey. Mine credit stood unblemished. To co-sign seemed but a trifling matter. She ceased to grace that employment with her presence 3 weeks hence. Alas, the payments have been neglected. Pray tell, whose credit hath suffered the blow? At the tender age of 23, my mother did summon me, her voice heavy with sorrow, for the burden of the mortgage had become overdue. Father hath been dismissed from his toil. Erin hath returned to dwell once more within these walls. Upon the morrow, I did transfer the sum of $2,000. None did express their gratitude unto me. Upon the festive season of Christmas, my mother bestowed upon me a chalice inscribed with the words, "World's best daughter," which nearly provoked a fit of mirth from my lips. At the age of 25, Erin found herself ensnared by the law for driving under the influence. At the very least, this was the first we were made aware of. Father hath requested that I maintain silence regarding the matter. Proclaimed it would tarnish the family's good name. I did render payment for the counsel. Erin uttered not a single word. A 12-month hence, when she found herself ensnared once more by the watchful eyes of the law, and I, steadfast in my resolve, declined to offer assistance, my mother did declare me as frigid of heart. Thou hast ne'er comprehended the weight of concern for one thou dost cherish, she spake. Erin's existence doth bear a heavier burden than thine own. In that fleeting instant, the truth was laid bare before mine eyes. Not deemed novel. They were blind to my presence. They beheld a mechanism, a spout they could unleash when misfortune did strike. A purse that beamed with delight. I began to withdraw, graciously refusing. Shifting the discourse, uttering that I shall ponder it rather than acquiescing, they did take note. Yet, they found it most displeasing. On a solitary eve, I discovered myself ensconced within the confines of mine own dwelling. The dwelling I procured unaided, adorned with treasures from clearance sales, funded month by month through figures and meticulous planning, all achieved with a steadfast resolve. Upon gazing at the threshold, a disquieting truth dawned upon me. The sanctuary I once cherished now felt fraught with peril. For it was not my possession when they sought a favor. It hath ever belonged to us. Verily, akin to my hours, my coin, and my forbearance. Thus, I have come to a resolution. I summoned a purveyor of abodes, transacted the dwelling, with discretion and in accordance with the law. With nary a trumpet's blare, I took up residence in a modest abode across the way. None inquired of the whereabouts, and I made no such revelation. Though the words lingered upon my lips, I chose silence instead. Not from a heart of malice. Not from a spirit of vengeance. From the depths of neglect. Forsooth, when one is reared in a household that doth value naught but thy utility, the most benevolent act one may bestow upon oneself is to vanish into the ether. Merely sufficient to draw in the air of life. The writings commenced upon the morn of Monday. On the morn of Saturday, we shall convey Erin's mattress forthwith. On the eve of Friday, Frank doth prepare to load the boxes with great diligence. She doth rejoice to possess at last her own domain. I made no response. I had no need to do so. They did converse with a semblance of my being that hath since faded into oblivion. Each missive presumed I would unbar the portal, reorder the tapestry of my existence, bear the burden in silence, as shadows cloak the toil. They had ventured forth in such endeavors previously. They were blissfully unaware that my ears had turned to silence. By the 4th day of the week, my mother did send missives to me with great regularity. Pray, inform me if thou dost require any cleaning ere she takes residence. Erin doth declare she shall not be a weight upon others. She doth bring her own fare. That one did tickle my fancy, causing a soft chuckle to escape as I sipped my brew. She had not laid hands upon a dish in her own abode for many a year, yet I allowed the scene to unfold as fate would have it. I did not resist the tide of circumstance. I did render payment for the counsel. Erin uttered not a single word. A 12-month hence, when she found herself ensnared once more by the watchful eyes of the law, and I, steadfast in my resolve, declined to offer assistance, my mother did declare me as frigid of heart. Thou hast ne'er comprehended the weight of concern for one thou dost cherish, she spake. Erin's existence doth bear a heavier burden than thine own. In that fleeting instant, the truth was laid bare before mine eyes. Not deemed novel. They were blind to my presence. They beheld a mechanism, a spout they could unleash when misfortune did strike. A purse that beamed with delight. I began to withdraw, graciously refusing. Shifting the discourse, uttering that I shall ponder it rather than acquiescing, they did take note. Yet, they found it most displeasing. On a solitary eve, I discovered myself ensconced within the confines of mine own dwelling. The dwelling I procured unaided, adorned with treasures from clearance sales, funded month by month through figures and meticulous planning, all achieved with a steadfast resolve. Upon gazing at the threshold, a disquieting truth dawned upon me. The sanctuary I once cherished now felt fraught with peril. For it was not my possession when they sought a favor. It hath ever belonged to us. Verily, akin to my hours, my coin, and my forbearance. Thus, I have come to a resolution. I summoned a purveyor of abodes, transacted the dwelling, with discretion and in accordance with the law. With nary a trumpet's blare, I took up residence in a modest abode across the way. None inquired of the whereabouts, and I made no such revelation. Though the words lingered upon my lips, I chose silence instead. Not from a heart of malice. Not from a spirit of vengeance. From the depths of neglect. Forsooth, when one is reared in a household that doth value naught but thy utility, the most benevolent act one may bestow upon oneself is to vanish into the ether. Merely sufficient to draw in the air of life. The writings commenced upon the morn of Monday. On the morn of Saturday, we shall convey Erin's mattress forthwith. On the eve of Friday, Frank doth prepare to load the boxes with great diligence. She doth rejoice to possess at last her own domain. I made no response. I had no need to do so. They did converse with a semblance of my being that hath since faded into oblivion. Each missive presumed I would unbar the portal, reorder the tapestry of my existence, bear the burden in silence, as shadows cloak the toil. They had ventured forth in such endeavors previously. They were blissfully unaware that my ears had turned to silence. By the 4th day of the week, my mother did send missives to me with great regularity. Pray, inform me if thou dost require any cleaning ere she takes residence. Erin doth declare she shall not be a weight upon others. She doth bring her own fare. That one did tickle my fancy, causing a soft chuckle to escape as I sipped my brew. She had not laid hands upon a dish in her own abode for many a year, yet I allowed the scene to unfold as fate would have it. I did not resist the tide of circumstance. Forsooth, I took this course of action, for I grew weary of dwelling in a realm that never truly belonged to me. I undertook this action, for I was worthy of entering mine own abode without the dread of impending tumult. Forsooth, at times the most benevolent act one may bestow upon those who steadfastly cling to their ways is to cease providing them with room to linger. They believed that was the conclusion of the tale. They were mistaken. Forsooth, by the hour of dusk, they did stand at mine own threshold. Verily, I anticipated their arrival. As I partook of my morning brew, whilst the messages from kin amassed in silence, I was acutely aware that my mother would not relent. She would toil or summon another or appear unbidden, all to demonstrate that regardless of the distance I traversed, I remained within her grasp. Ever bound by duty. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a rap upon the door did sound. 3 swift and sharp strikes. the sort one encounters when a soul endeavors to maintain decorum whilst teetering on the brink of composure. I gazed through the small aperture, seeking to unveil the mysteries beyond. Carol, Frank, Aaron, and a trunk brimming with boxes did rest upon the curb, as if the day of departure had come to pass. I didst part the portal but a fraction. Thou hast discovered me, I declared, with a tone most unadorned. Mother appeared quite agitated, her rouge diminished and tresses hastily swept back as though she had tousled them with great frequency. We did attempt to summon her, yet she responded with a voice constrained. We did not anticipate thy presence. We did not foresee that thou wouldst be here. It is mine abode, I declared, yet thou didst proclaim that the voice of my father was ascending in fervor. Thou didst proclaim that she might take residence here. Lo, we find ourselves amidst her belongings, yet thou dost comport thyself as if we are but mere strangers. I remained steadfast in my position. I did not elevate my tone. Never did I utter such permission for her to take residence within these walls. I did declare, should it serve to aid Aaron, I perceive no reason to withhold my consent. That abode of yore, which, if thou dost remember, I no longer call mine own. Aaron did advance, yet her arms did fold across her breast. Her cheeks did glow, not from the sting of shame, but from the fire of wrath. This matter is trifling, Rachel. Thou dost ever comport thyself as though thou art exalted above all, yet this is naught but cruelty. I did incline my head. Thou hast gathered thine belongings and traversed the vast expanse of the city, seeking refuge in a dwelling whose very existence thou didst not ascertain. That is not an act of malice. Such is the nature of entitlement. Aaron's voice did tremble and break. Thou art my sister. Verily, I did proclaim. Indeed, most splendid. And thou hast squandered many a year mistaking that for unencumbered lodgings. Father interposed himself betwixt us. His voice, laced with foreboding, didst carry a note of caution. Pray, Rachel, we shall not take our leave. We have endured much from thee. This debt is owed to thy sister. Lo, there it stood. The term that ever lingered, yet remained unuttered. Alas, as though each coin I have bestowed, each moment I have toiled, and every restless night devoted to untangling woes not of my own making had been inscribed in some ledger unseen. A fragment of a pact unbidden, one I never did endorse. I withdrew a pace, grasping my device of communication. What dost thou engage in? Mother inquired, her gaze sharpening with scrutiny. I chose to remain silent. I summoned forth 3 rings upon the dial. Then call upon the emergency number, 911. Pray, what dost thou seek in this hour of need? Mine utterance remained steady. Indeed, there are kinfolk lingering beyond my dwelling, steadfast in their refusal to depart. They are not inscribed upon the covenant. They were not summoned to partake in the gathering. Pray, I must bring forth a matter of unwelcome intrusion upon my rightful domain. Aaron's lips parted in astonishment. Frank muttered oaths beneath his breath. Mother appeared as though I had dealt her a grievous blow. Rachel, she did murmur, her voice laced with a desperate yearning. Thou art summoning the constabulary upon thine own kin. Text, I did entreat thee to depart, I did indeed. Thou didst not. The messenger did inquire of my dwelling's location. I bestowed it. Aaron's voice trembled with fury. This shall bring forth ruin upon all that is dear. Art thou aware of the thoughts that dwell in the minds of others regarding thyself? Art thou aware of what they shall utter? Indeed, I did proclaim. They shall utter. At last, I have ceased to unbar my portal. Mother didst blink. Her voice fell to a whisper, delicate and faint. Thou wert once gentle of heart. I did not waver. In times of my sorrow, thou didst perceive my plight. The hush that ensued was far from void. It bore the weight of unheeded limits, of words choked back, of instances where I acquiesced when my heart yearned to cry out in defiance. A chariot of law arrived a mere 10 minutes hence. The officer emerged, standing with poise and tranquillity, her hand resting near her belt yet untroubled. As twilight descended, she uttered those words. A summons hath been received regarding the act of trespass. I did acquiesce with a gentle nod. Verily, 'tis I. She cast her gaze upon my progenitors, upon Aaron, and upon the carriage, laden with satchels yet resting in the trunk. Good sir or fair lady, I must beseech thee to vacate this hallowed ground. This is our daughter, quoth Frank. This is a matter of kin, and here lies her abode, quoth the officer, which thou art not permitted to inhabit without her leave. Aaron appeared as though she were on the brink of weeping, or perhaps casting forth an object in her tumultuous state, or perchance both actions entwined in her fervent emotion. Thou shalt come to rue this day, fair Rachel. Nay, I did declare. Regret hath shadowed my every step, leading me to this very moment. This is the foremost certainty that doth reside within my mind. Upon the morrow, I arose to find mine device beset with 12 missed calls, 5 from my mother, 2 from my father, and the remainder from unfamiliar digits, perchance cousins or family acquaintances with whom I had not exchanged words since the day of my graduation. Then arrived the verses. What folly drives thee to act thus against thine own sister? Your mother is filled with sorrow. Erin doth slumber within her chariot of steel. Is that which thou dost desire? I did not respond. I merely traversed the scroll before me. At long last, I stumbled upon it, a missive on the realm of Facebook from my dear mother. 3 public paragraphs adorned with symbols of sorrow and accompanied by an image of Erin in her early years. We nurtured our daughters to cherish one another, yet one has seemingly lost sight of that noble bond. We are filled with sorrow that Rachel, in her great success and fortune, would forsake us in our hour of need. Fair Erin, thou art ill-treated by fate's cruel hand. None amongst us did. Countless praises and a multitude of remarks from souls I had not encountered since the tender age of 12, accusing me of being self-serving, frigid, and presumptuous. It was not a novel thing, merely amplified in its expression. Mine eyes were fixed upon the screen for an age unmeasured. Thus, for the inaugural occasion in my existence, I did return a thread to its origin. Plain and unadorned, devoid of embellishments or symbols. Pray, capture the image of the $2,000 remittance I hath dispatched to fulfill the mortgage obligation. Capture an image of my name inscribed upon Erin's chariot loan, succeeded by the missive of collections, and a likeness of the legal invoice pertaining to her transgression of the law. A chronicle of each singular boon I hath consented to since the age of 21. The parchment bearing witness to the transaction of the dwelling, a humble abode now exchanged. And at last, a missive I had preserved. Once, a missive from Erin reached me 2 years past, wherein she deemed me a tedious automaton for denying her the indulgence of residing with me for a month. I concluded with a solitary phrase, I did not forsake my kin. I have ceased my labors in the realm of emotional obligation. Upon that moment, I didst extinguish the light of my device. Not from fear did I refrain, but rather from a lack of desire for acclaim. All I sought was a moment of tranquillity, and forsooth, I possessed it at last. On that eve, the chamber lay in silence. Silence reigns in the corridor, with no clamor from the outside world, nor the incessant ring of a device. Only the gentle murmur of the refrigerator and the sporadic groan of aged pipes echo through the chambers. Upon the hearth, I brewed a potion of chamomile, a soothing elixir for the weary soul. It was not for slumber, for I required no aid in the realm of dreams any longer. It was for the sacred rite. A gentle vessel cradled within my palms, vapors ascending as if to grant pardon unbidden, I had not sought. Mine device did illuminate but a single time. Mother, once more. Erin, I did not partake in the opening, for it was not requisite for me to do so. By this time, the cadence was well known to me. Disbelief, ire, remorse, entreaty. Perpetually in that sequence. I did seal off both lines, not from malice, nor from hubris, but for the reason that not every threshold merits an eternal rapping. I did venture forth upon the balcony's edge. The air was frigid, yet lacked a biting edge. The chill that doth awaken the senses, a reminder of thine own existence. Lo! Beneath the bustling city, a symphony of life did unfold, as souls traversed the streets, their headlights casting a luminous glow. A figure, clad in a coat of ample fluff, strolled with a canine companion, ill-suited for the gentle embrace of spring. A neighbor from 2 floors below didst wave upon catching sight of me, and I returned the gesture with a wave of mine own. Though modest in its nature, That slight act bore a truth more profound than the myriad deeds I had performed under the weight of duty. Within the confines of my abode, I extinguished the lights in a measured fashion, the parlor, the culinary chamber, the corridor, devoid of portraiture upon the walls, bereft of familial likenesses, merely silence, merely an expanse of unblemished tranquillity. Neither did I bask in the glow of victory nor wallow in despair. I simply felt spent, enacting, spent, elucidating, spent, serving as the auxiliary apparatus for those unversed in the art of self-sustenance. In distant realms, perchance they are penning anew the tale, portraying me as the scoundrel, the frigid heart, or the daughter lacking in gratitude. Let them be, for I did not arrive in this realm to seek affection. I have arrived to cease the charade of my own disappearance. They did recount the tale as I had, and now I have penned it anew.